Hi everyone, my name is Richard with Richard K Photography. Today I just wanted to go over a quick cheat sheet that I've created that I give to a lot of photographers that take my workshops. Just talking about exposure, aperture, shutter, and your ISO. Many are trying to get into the manual mode setting. So this is just kind of a quick overview as far as some of the settings and some things to look out for and kind of play around with as what you're doing. These are settings for any kind of camera, any DSLR that allows you to do manual mode. So let's just start. Let me zoom in. We'll start with exposure. Many of you that are shooting in manual mode, you guys will see, you'll see these markers that you see, the -2, 1, 0, 1, +2. That's your camera's in light meter. Every camera that's a DSLR should have a built-in light meter. So as you can see, this is a Nikon version of what they say. Right in the middle is ideal. That's where they say that's your ideal light reading for your camera, what it's reading of what you're shooting. So as you can see, the overexposure would be the plus. Now if you can tell that Canon runs their plus symbol on the right, Nikon runs theirs on the left. So don't get that confused. So again, if you're on Nikon or Canon, just look for the plus or the minus. If you're on a negative, if your lines are all negative, as you see the negative symbol on the Nikon and then the -2 on the Canon, that means you're underexposed. If you were to take that photo, that means your photo should come out, pretty much completely black. You wouldn't be able to see anything. Overexposed would be completely opposite, just a lot of light coming into your camera. So that's a quick explanation about exposure. Now aperture, aperture, I tell people to think of it as your eye or like a portal hole of some sort. The lower the number, obviously the more light. That's why a lot of these top of the line cameras that are offering 1.2, some go a little lower, but 1.2 is pretty common. That's going to give you the biggest aperture possible, which means basically you're allowing a lot more light into your camera. So the common is 1.4. As you can see, as it goes up in number, f2, f8, f2.8, f4, 5, 6, 8, and so on. Most will go up to f22. Your hole is just that much smaller. So ideally, if you're shooting in a dark area, you want a larger aperture. You want a smaller number. So f1.4, f1.2 is ideal if you're shooting low light. If you're shooting something, bright daylight, many will use an f8. And up from there, just depending how much light you're coming in. Now, those of you who like that bokeh effect, that like shooting on a typical lens, standard zoom lens, if you're not shooting on a prime lens, but even if you are shooting on a prime lens, this also affects you as well. So again, the larger your aperture, shallow depth of field, more light, more blurred. Background's a lot more blurred out with a higher, a lower aperture setting like f1.4. So if you want to blur your background out, keep your subject in focus, you're going to be at a 1.4. Now reverse to that, if you're trying to get a lot of the background in, including your subject, you want everything, then you want to go with a higher aperture setting, f16, f11. Again, this all will vary though upon how much light you have and what your exposure reading coming in. So we're moving down to shutter. Shutter speed is basically how long your shutter's open to capture that image. The longer exposure you have, you'll sometimes click your camera and maybe you have it on a 2-second or 10-second. frame, and that's good for like if you're doing maybe lights at night. You want to get that blurred effect of the lights. If you're shooting like cars driving by and you want to get that long exposure where the lights are looking like they're continuous light, then you want a longer exposure. If you're shooting water and you want that really soft feel, then you want a longer exposure time. That would give you just as you get lower, if you're shooting, you want to shoot, and if you're shooting at night, you want to be at like a 150. It's a longer exposure, which allows the shutter to be open to capture more light, capture more image. Now, as you get further down into like the 130, 125, and so forth, you definitely want to be on a tripod to keep your camera steady, because that will cause a lot of noise in your photo, or will cause just the light to bend as you go. So if you're doing more quick action type stuff and you want to capture more stuff, then you want to bump up a little higher in your shutter speed, 125. So ideally, ultimately, if you're shooting like bright daylight, I would be at like a f8, f5.6, and probably like a 1.250, maybe a 1.25, 1 and 1.25. So it just varies. Again, that's where you would go back up to your exposure and just kind of see what's working for you and what you're trying to get out of your shot. So that's your shutter speed. Now ISO is pretty much the key to all, I feel. This is what basically controls the quality of your photo in my aspect. The lower the ISO number you can keep, a 100, a 200, that is basically going to give you the highest quality if you can shoot at that ISO. If you're shooting bright daylight, 100 ISO is ideal. Again, that'd be a lot cleaner. If you're shooting at night, you're going up. If you're shooting midday, sunset, whatnot, you'll probably be at an 800, maybe a 1600, just depending how fast you're shooting. And then that just causes more noise. You'll start seeing a little bit of grain in your photo. As you get up into 16 and above, whether you're on a tripod or not, you're going to get quite a bit of noise in your photo, that graininess to your photo. So the lower the ISO number you can keep, the better light you can get, the better quality photo overall you will achieve. So this is just a quick overview of my cheat sheet. So I hope that kind of helps and makes a little bit of sense. But if you have any questions or like to sign up for a workshop on photography that explains all this a little bit better on hands-on, feel free to contact me, and please subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.